Hello everyone, I'm David Chumperle, one of the developers of the GMIC software, or GMIC if you prefer to pronounce it this way. GMIC is an open source framework for image processing, and today I'd like to talk about a specific set of image processing filters which are focused on the transformation of the color mood of images. More precisely, I'll explain in this talk what we have done to be able to integrate more than 890 presets of generic color transformations into GMIC, and this without wasting hundreds of megabytes of storage. This is a joint work with Amal Mahboubi and Christine Porquet for the algorithmic part, and Pat David for the actual design of most of the color presets available in GMIC. First, a bit of context. GMIC is an open source framework that contains a lot of filters and algorithms for tweaking your images. It comes with a quite popular plugin named GMIC Qt, which has been available for GIMP and Krita for years, and which has recently landed on Photoshop, Affinity Photo, and PaintShop Pro since last December. That's how the GMIC Qt plugin currently looks. Basically, with GMIC, our goal is to offer a wide range of image processing filters for everyone. If you've never heard of GMIC, I'd suggest you visit the project webpage. There's a nice gallery of effects there and where you can see what GMIC might do for you. On this screenshot, I've chosen one of the filters we are interested in today. This filter allows to apply different color presets to change the color mood of an image. The left part of the preview shows the original input image, and the right part shows the result of the color processing. This screenshot illustrates our goal for today, which is how can we provide several hundreds of such color transformations in the GMIC framework. One of the most common models for representing a generic color mapping is what people call a color LUT, or a CLUT, which stands for Color Lookup Table. A CLUT is actually a very simple model to understand, but it's very versatile as it can represent a wide variety of color transformations. Basically, a CLUT is nothing more than a function defined in the RGB cube, that is to say, a 3D function that defines the transformation of every possible RGB color into a new RGB color. Practically, to apply a color LUT to an image, we have to repeat a simple procedure on all image pixels. First, we read the RGB triplet of a pixel we want to modify. Second, we go to the 3D color LUT at coordinate RGB, and we read the value of the new color defined here. Let's say it's R'(G')B', and we replace the original RGB color by R'(G')B'. And we actually do this for all image pixels. Note that if in your image 2 points have identical colors, then they will keep as identical colors after the mapping. Here you can see an example of applying the CLUT defined on the left to the original color image on the top, which results in the image at the bottom. As a CLUT is basically a lookup table for all existing RGB colors, you can feel that it's quite a large object. For instance, for a color image encoded with 8-bit per channel, you theoretically need a resolution of 256 cubed, that is to say more than 16 million color correspondences. In practice, as the 3D functions are rather smooth, color LUTs are usually stored with much lower 3D resolution, like 17, 33 or 64, along each of the RGB axes of the cube. I think the CLUT pack in raw therapy even goes up to a resolution of 144 anyway. With those lower resolution CLUTs, you can still use linear or cubic interpolation schemes afterwards to actually retrieve the full range of color values. What is cool with color LUTs is that it can define any kind of color transformations. Here you see the application of a few different CLUTs on the same input image. CLUTs are able to render very different color changes as color fading, color boosting, black and white conversion, light change, or analog film simulation. So clearly this is a very interesting way of modeling generic color transformations. There are already tons of CLUTs available on the internet. Each of them usually has a name that describes the kind of transformation it tries to simulate, like color negative, backlight filter, and so on. If you try downloading CLUTs from the internet, you'll probably get them either as files with extensions .cube or .png. That's the two most common formats used to store color LUTs. The cube format is a very simple text file where each color of the RGB cube is stored as a triplet of floating point numbers. It's not stored in a compressed way, so cube files are rather not optimal for storing large CLUTs. As a result, those files are limited to low CLUT resolutions, usually 17 or 33, and they are often packed together in a compressed zip archives. As for the PNG format, it basically stores all the 3D slices of the CLUT in an unrolled way, so the idea is first create a 2D color image from a 3D CLUT, then saves this 2D image as a PNG file, taking advantage of the lossless compression. This 2D representation of a CLUT is also known as an AL-CLUT. This is what you see here on the right image. PNG is about 10 times more efficient than the cube format, but it still takes a few dozens to hundreds of kilobytes for storing a single CLUT. This means that even with PNG's only storage, a pack of, let's say, 800 CLUTs would take at least around 60 or 70 megabytes of compressed data on your disk, even with a low 3D resolution. By comparison, it's already 6 times the size of the whole GMIC-Qt plugin binary. To keep things as light as possible, we have then designed a specific compression algorithm that is able to store hundreds of CLUTs in GMIC with a very low memory footprint. I detail all the steps of this algorithm in the following slide. The idea of our CLUT compression technique is as follows. We aim to determine a minimal set of sparsely distributed color key points in the RGB cube so that those key points are able to catch the important internal variations of the color LUT, meaning that in a second step we should be able to interpolate in some way the values of these color key points in the whole 3D cube and get back the original color LUT, or at least the color LUT that is close enough, for instance, that is visually equivalent to the original CLUT. Hopefully, this set of sparse key points should contain much less elements than all the mapped colors contained in the original CLUT. Then, this set of key points, now representing a new color image like the one on the right, could be also compressed with a lossless compression technique, such as the one used in PNG, and finally takes up very little space. So, clearly, the whole CLUT compression procedure requires two important steps. First, we have to define a way to reconstruct a full color LUT from a set of sparse key points. That is basically the decompression step. Second, having a known decompression method, we have to determine a reasonable set of key points that capture the global color variations of a color LUT. Of course, the goal is that the user should not be able to spot the differences between an image processed with the original CLUT against the compressed CLUT. For the decompression step, we actually define a 3D interpolation technique based on the use of anisotropic diffusion PDEs, which are also known as partial differential equations. The specific equations allow the reconstruction of a dense 3D CLUT from a set of sparse color key points, with the interesting property that the complexity of the algorithm does actually not depend on the number of key points, but only on the spatial resolution of the 3D CLUT we want to reconstruct. This means that whatever the number of key points is, the reconstruction time will be constant for all CLUTs with a given resolution. Let me detail a bit how the CLUT decompression algorithm works. At this point, we assume we already have a set of color key points that we name K, and we want to reconstruct the full dense CLUT in a RGB cube from K. A key point in K is entirely defined by its 3D coordinates in the RGB cube, what I call xk, yk, zk here, and its corresponding mapped color rk, gk, bk. Then what we do is we propagate the color values of all key points of K in the RGB domain by using a specific diffusion PDE, which can be seen as an equation that physically simulates the diffusion of heat or chemical concentrations, here the key point color, in a non-homogeneous environment, here the 3D cube. I won't enter much into the mathematical details of the equation here, but this basically means we model the diffusion process by this particular anisotropic diffusion equation, where the main diffusion orientations eta are defined at each point of the 3D cube by something related to the gradient of the distance function to the key points. This is why the process is called anisotropic. At each point of the cube, the diffusion is done only along a main orientation that is different each time. the diffusion is not done in all directions at the same time, which would correspond to the so-called isotropic diffusion. Let me illustrate this reconstruction process of a CLUT with this toy example. We start by a RGB cube where only the color of few points are known, that is to say the key points. Then we can deduce an initial estimation of the full CLUT by any means, here for instance by computing the Voronoi diagram associated to this set of key points, and filling each Voronoi cell with the color of the closest key point. After that, we apply our anisotropic diffusion equation and obtain a steady-state solution after a few iterations. That is the reconstructed CLUT. If your initial estimate is close enough to the steady-state solution, which is the case here, then you'll need less iteration to converge. But at the end, choosing a different initial estimate does not change much the result you get. You can start from a cube that is almost zero everywhere, and you'll get the same result, as long as you wait enough for the diffusion process to propagate your key points color over the whole cube, of course. That will just be much longer to converge. From a numerical point of view, implementing this anisotropic diffusion process in 3D requires a bit of care. First, because the equation uses diffusion orientations defined from a quantity that is not differentiable everywhere, so this requires specific spatial discretization schemes, such as the one we display here. I'll pass over this slide quickly, just pause the video if you want to get all the mathematical details. Second, we have also to take care of the temporal discretization of the equation. If not done correctly, you may end up with a non-converging diffusion process, or, on the contrary, to a slowly converging diffusion process. Again, I won't spend much time on this slide, just be aware that we have found a simple enough numerical scheme that implements the diffusion PD, and which converge relatively quickly to an acceptable solution. Also, to avoid spending too much time computing a good initial estimate, we adopt a multi-scale strategy. We first start with a 1 by 1 by 1 CLUT, which contains a single point that is actually the color average of all known key points, and we upscale this CLUT by a factor 2. Then we apply some iterations of our diffusion PDE, then again upscale the result by a factor 2, and iterate the diffusion PDE, and so on until the CLUT has been reconstructed at the desired resolution. This multi-scale technique actually ensures that the initial estimate of the diffusion process at a given scale is always good enough. In practice, this highly reduces the number of required iterations to converge to the steady-state solution at each scale. Finally, all these numerical tricks allow the CLUT decompression algorithm to reconstruct a 64-cubed CLUT in less than 1 second, considering that each iteration of the diffusion step can also take advantage of multithreading if you have multiple cores in your CPU. I told you earlier that the diffusion process was not isotropic, but anisotropic, meaning the diffusion is not done in all directions of the space at each point. Here is why. This is the kind of function that can be reconstructed using an isotropic approach from a set of key points here in 2D for simplifying the visualization. Compare it to what we are able to reconstruct with an anisotropic approach, illustrated at the bottom. For both cases, you can see also the 3D profiles of the reconstructed functions in order to see what kind of 3D structures both approaches are able to reconstruct. Clearly, the anisotropic version of the diffusion look more appropriate, dealing with more complex color variations such as the ones we can find actually in color LUTs. Note also that there are other well-known mathematical tools for interpolating a set of sparse values. One of them that is quite popular is the RBF technique, which stands for radial basis functions. As you can see here, a RBF approach is also able to reconstruct very interesting color variations, clearly also close to what we could find for real in color LUTs. One of the major concerns of using RBF in our context is actually that the corresponding algorithm complexity is cubic according to the number of key points, which means that for a high number of key points, like more than 300 or 400, the reconstruction time will become very, very long, particularly in our case where we want to reconstruct the full RGB cube. Now that we have a quite efficient algorithm to reconstruct a CLUT from a set of color key points, we are interested in the second step, that is to say, the compression step. The question here is how to determine the set K of key points in order to reconstruct a given CLUT so that the reconstructed CLUT F tilde looks the same as the input CLUT F. When I say look the same as, this must be measured in some way. For this, we define two calculable quality criteria that must be verified to assume that the reconstructed clot F tilde is close enough to F. Those criteria are based on the CIE 2000 color difference formula, often denoted as delta E. Delta E is a perceptual measure of the difference between two given colors. Here, we can compute the delta E between all colors of the original clot F and the corresponding points of a reconstructed clot F tilde, and do some stats on it to retrieve, for instance, the maximum and average values of all the delta E, which at the end give two perceptual measures of the global difference between the clots F and F tilde. Now, we assume that the reconstruction quality is good enough when these two constraints are verified at the same time. That is to say, delta E max must be below some threshold, here we choose 1.5, and delta E average must be below some other threshold, here we choose 0.75. The idea behind our compression algorithm is that we will iteratively add new key points as long as these two quality measures do not hold. First, we initialize our key point set K by adding the color key points located at the 8 corners of the RGB cube. Then, we reconstruct a clot from this set of key points. This is the clot you see here, in the middle. We can see it's not completely different from the original one, but it still misses important tones. Now we can compute the perceptual error delta E between those two clots computed at each point of the cube. Of course, right now the quality criteria do not hold. So what we do is find the location where the maximum value of the error occurs. In this case, the point with the maximal error is located here. And precisely that will be the location of the color key point we will add to the set K. So now we have 9 key points in our set K, and we repeat the procedure. We reconstruct the clot from those 9 key points, and you see that there is already a bit much of orange colors that have appeared in this clot. Match is still not perfect, of course, so we compute again the pointwise perceptual error delta E, and we locate the coordinates of the new maximum. Again, this point is added as a new key point to our set K. Now we have 10 key points in our set K, and the quality criteria still do not hold. So we repeat the steps again and again, reconstruct the clot from the growing set of key points K, compute the pointwise perceptual color difference delta E, locate the maximum of the error, and add it as a new key point in K. This way, the reconstructed clot becomes closer and closer to the original clot as new key points are added to K. And you can see that the reconstruction error decreases over time, which is good news. So now we have 12 points, 13, 14, 15, with 20 key points, 30, and the error still decreases. 40 key points, 50 key points, 70, 90, and here is a global view of what happened with this clot compression as the iteration went on. There is a decrease of the max and average error, as well as an increase of the quality of the reconstructed clot. Note that all this takes quite a lot of time to achieve, because at each iteration we need to reconstruct a whole clot from the running set of key points K. And we need also to compute the pointwise perceptual color difference delta E between the original and reconstructed clots, which actually takes a bit of time. However, we end up with a set of key points that accurately describes the input clot, and that is the only representation we will keep in GIMIC to store the corresponding color transformation. There is a table that shows some compression benchmarks for 4 different clots with different input resolutions. You can see the sizes of the corresponding clots when they are stored as a .tube or .png file. Here you see the number of key points found by our compression algorithm to meet the perceptual criteria defined before. Often a few hundreds of key points are enough to describe a clot, except for clots containing complex color variations such as strong discontinuities, for instance. Although you can see that the compression time is far from real time. It goes from a few seconds to a few minutes for each clot. But what most important is the decompression time, which is quite fast in any case, because at the end, that's the only time that will bother the user of the GIMIC filter. The output size of the key points, stored in PNG format, finally shows the interest of doing all this. We generally achieve a compression rate of more than 90% for the 800 plus CLUTs we processed this way, meaning that the original pack of CLUTs that was taking a bit more than 500 megabytes can now be stored as a set of key points in less than 3.5 megabytes. That means an overall compression rate of more than 99%, which is really a huge compression rate. Of course, this compression technique is lossy, which means you won't get exactly the same CLUT as the original when you decompress it from the key points. But the quality of the decompression is guaranteed good enough to make no visible differences in practice, and the compression gain is so huge that it is worth it. What does this allow for the user of the GMIC software? Let me show you a demo of some of the filters in the GMIC-Qt plugin that use the decompression technique. So here we are. I've launched GIMP and I've opened an image file with a kingfisher bird in it. And I will show you in the GMIC-Qt plugin 3 different filters that deal with these CLUT compression, decompression techniques in order to propose filters to change the color mood of your image. So first, I open the GMIC-Qt plugin, and the first filter I would like to talk about is located in the colors category and is called color presets. Okay, this filter basically lets you choose different CLUTs, and as we have many different CLUTs in GMIC, like more than 800, we have grouped them by packs. So the first thing is to choose the CLUT pack you want to select. So there are different packs, and by default the pack is the one provided by the Pixel US community. So this is a pack that have been done by members of the Pixel US forum. Thanks again to them for this nice contribution. Once you have selected a pack, you can choose in the preset combo box the name of the CLUT that you want to apply. For instance, let's choose the first one, Amstragram, and you see the change between the original and the processed image. I will set the preview to splitted version so you can see the effect between the original and the processed image. And each time I select a new preset, there's a new CLUT that is decompressed and applied on the image. So this is the Autumn CLUT, Cinematic Ladybird, Cinematic Mexico, Dark Blues in Sunlight, and you see that some of the CLUTs are very subtle effects and some are more dramatic. So faded look, faded print. I will show you one that is quite contrasted, so I can show you the effect of the different sliders in the filter. So this one, Sweet Bubblegum, make the white very white, and so maybe it's a bit more strong effect. So what we can do with the other sliders is to set the strength of the effect. So the strength is a slider that goes from 0 to 100, and 0 corresponds to the original image, 100 corresponds to the image processed with the CLUT. And if you select an image value between 0 and 100, it corresponds to the opacity of the blending mode of the blended image between the input and the image processed with the CLUT. Okay, so here I will lower a bit the effect. I can play as always some classical sliders like brightness, contrast, etc. Okay, and if I choose another pack, let's say I choose Shamoon Abazi pack, which has 25 CLUTs in it, you see that the list of presets have changed, and you can now choose another kind of CLUT. One word about the specs, there is a very, very nice website that is named freshluts.com, which propose a lot of different CLUTs for downloading under a Creative Commons license. So what I did for most of the pack in the color preset filter is that I've downloaded the CLUTs from these different authors, and then I compressed the original cube file into the format used in GMIC, which is the format that defines a CLUT with a set of key points. Okay, so you have a very different choices, and you can achieve a lot of different color presets. The second filter I would like to talk about is named Simulate Film, and is also located in the colors category. It's exactly the same principle as color preset. You have a category that is a kind of filter pack and a preset associated to each category. The difference here is that each CLUT here are focused on the simulation of analog films. So for instance, if I choose the black and white category, I will have a lot of different presets that allows different black and white conversions. Okay. Now if I choose the slide color category, I have different brand of films that the CLUTs try to simulate. Okay. So there is one I like very much, is Fuji Superia. It's a quite dramatic effect, but let me show something about it. So the idea is that, okay, I split the preview. Imagine you have a color image and you want to apply some CLUTs on it, like this. I've choose the output mode to be new layers, so I will get the result as a new layer. This is the original image, this is the processed image. And now suppose that you want to play with the color tools of GIMP, for instance with the curve. I select this and play. Oops, sorry, I think I had to select it before. Okay, now I play with the curve, okay, like this. So you see, I'm not an artist at all. What I do here is mainly tweaking the parameters, but without any artistic consideration. So let's say I'm happy with this edit. I know it's not very good, but let's say I'm happy. It's the best I can do. And now I would like to apply this same color modification on different images, like different view of the same bird, for instance. But I don't remember all the steps I've done to go from this original image to this processed image. In GMIC Qt there is a filter that will help you a lot if you are in this situation. This filter is named CLUT from after before layers, and it's located in the colors category. And in this CLUT you have to take care of choosing the input layer all here option. What does this filter do is simply it considers that the top layer is your processed image and the bottom layer is the original image, and from those two images it will create a color LUT that corresponds exactly to the transformation that goes from the image on the bottom layer to the image on the top layer. The difficulty here is that, of course, you don't know, the filter doesn't know all the color correspondences of the RGB cube. It just knows the correspondences that are defined by the color in your input image. So what it does is that from there's all the correspondences he knows, he creates a set of key points, and then he interpolates those key points in the full RGB cube using the diffusion PDEs I've told you before. So let's say that I want to output this CLUT as a cube file. So I choose this output mode, save CLUT as a cube file, and I will set, for instance, yes, this file name output.cube, and I click OK. So mainly you won't see any difference because the filter just saves the cube file in the folder you specify. So now I can remove this layer and I can invoke GMIC again and choose the filter colors apply external CLUT. And in this filter I will be able to choose my output cube file that has been saved by the previous filter. Sorry. And you see that you get exactly the same effect as before. And now the good thing is that if you have another image, like for instance this image of flowers, and you have selected the same output cube file, then you have the same kind of color changes in your image. So this is a very useful way to save your color edit, the color edit you made from one image to another. It's a very useful way to save it as a color LUT that can be shared with friends, or that can be reused afterward on different images. Well, that's it for the demo, and I go to the conclusion of this talk. Well, that's it. Now you know almost everything about this whole CLUT stuff in GMIC. I'm pretty sure it could be interesting to have this integrated also in other image editors or photo retouching software. GMIC provides a C and C++ library that could be used for integrating all this in other software. So do not hesitate to contact us if you need more information about this. And finally, I'm really sorry not to be able to answer your questions at the time of the presentation, but David has accepted to do the job for me. So do not hesitate to bother him a lot. Thank you, Pat. See you next time, maybe live in another LGM edition. Au revoir et à bientôt.